Welcome to the Faculty in the Spotlight series. This is sponsored by the Academic Senate in collaboration with the Canyons News team. So thank you to the team that's helping us tonight. And they are part of the Media, Entertainment, Arts Department here at College of the Canyons. So tonight is in particular a collaboration because I did it twice without their support. And then I did it another time with their support in our faculty center. And they said, Lisa, this would be a far better event if we moved it over to the newsroom. So I'm so grateful that they've allowed us to be over here because this will increase the production value tenfold. And of course, it's being recorded and streamed. So your friends and family and our colleagues can watch it. So a little bit about this series. This was designed as we came out of the pandemic to try to remind us all why we became teachers, to talk about the early days of our educational experience and potentially some impactful people along that way that inspired us to make the choice to become educators. Then we're going to talk about our time as an educator and maybe some significant events at that time, and whatever sort of comes up organically throughout our conversation. So yes, you don't know exactly where we're going, and I don't know exactly where we're going. But in full disclosure, I think it's important that we just own the fact that you and I have been friends and colleagues for about 25 years. So we've known each other through work, we've known each other outside of work. But honestly, as I thought about this event, there are lots of questions that I don't know the answers to. So we're going to start with the very, very beginning. So tell us where you were born and tell us a little bit about your family, how many siblings you have and that sort of thing. So.
Oh, man. I was born in Hong Kong in 1966, so you can do the math. I am the youngest in our family. My mom is still with us. She's turning 93 this year. I have two brothers and three sisters. We immigrated here 1976, so I was 10. So coming to America was kind of a big thing, and it was because my father, there's mandatory retirement in Hong Kong at 55. So there was no other job for him to have, so he had some family here and then got a job here in the United States. So we ended up pinpointing and red starring Burbank. So I went to Burbank.
Okay, we're definitely going to explore that one.
Yeah, so we've got a little bit in common with geography there with our high schools when we started. So went to Burbank, Burbank High School. I graduated from there.
Oh, no.
We're not going to go
way too fast. We're going to slow down just a little bit. Okay. So you're the youngest of six?
Yeah.
Okay. And is there a big gap between you and your oldest sibling? A little gap? Were you all close together?
Pretty big gap. I mean, decent gap, I guess.
Okay.
Not traditionally a normal gap, I think, with my oldest. If you just do the math with my mom had the first kids quite young, very young. So the gap between my mom and myself is exactly the same between myself and Anna, my daughter Anna, so 35 years. But there's a much smaller gap with some of the other ones.
Okay.
So I think the closest one to me is maybe 63 or 64. Okay. So yeah, we're a bunch of old Portuguese, Asian people.
Okay, so Portuguese, was that your first language?
No, I only ever spoke English, and I picked up some Mandarin growing up, mostly like the curse words and stuff, but like just enough to get by.
Okay.
But my family, actually, my mom would still to this day speaks kind of a hybrid. Okay. So if you don't really know what she's saying, it's hard to tell because one word would be Portuguese, one would be, some kind of Mandarin Cantonese, and then one would be English. So I don't know if they ever, English has always been the primary.
Okay.
And then when I was in Hong Kong, I went to British schools.
Okay.
So I never had, my brothers and sisters didn't. They went to Chinese schools. So yeah,
Okay. And why was that? Why were you sent to?
I was
British
special.
school?
I was special.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, I don't know why. We tried it. There was an interesting story. We tried it. I went to English schools, and it's very expensive
Okay.
there, and it's this private, deal with the uniforms and everything else. But they're all kind of like that with the uniforms, and they're very strict. And then the next year, my dad told me, "Hey, we can't really do this anymore. We're gonna go to this other school." And then I went to the other school, and it didn't work out. First day didn't work out, and then we went
First
back to
day?
the first day. Yeah.
First day.
So.
I'm thinking
Yeah.
this might be a thread that I want to pull on just a
Yeah,
little bit. Oh.
I ended up getting jumped on the bus. So I was probably like 7 or 8, and I got jumped on the bus. I instigated it 1,000%, but
Okay.
but I ended up getting jumped on this bus. And when I pulled up and the doors opened up, my dad's waiting there, and I basically like fell out with everybody on top of me. So it was like it was.
So we went for one day, or we didn't?
It was
even get
literally. I
there?
think it was one day, one full
Okay.
day. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I just remember I had a nosebleed. I used to get nosebleeds a lot.
Okay.
It's kind of weird to talk about that, but I used to get a lot of nosebleeds. And then I remember they took me to the nurse's office, and they just tilted my head over a trash can and just sat there.
So
And it
there
just
was
poured blood
nothing
for like 20
positive
minutes.
about
Yeah.
this experience. Okay.
So I wasn't in my right mind, I think, on the bus.
So did your parents find a way?
Yeah, they found a way, and they got me
to-
back.
Okay.
Yeah, with the English kids,
Okay.
who were much nicer.
And you were there until you were 10.
Yeah, and actually, it's very accelerated there.
Okay, so that was part
Yeah.
of what I wanted to explore. So the education system was quite strong, and you
Yeah.
felt really
It's pretty crazy. I actually went, jumping ahead, but at Berkeley, I had met a girl that went to school in Hong Kong and went through high school, and said it was much easier. Her classes were less strenuous at Cal than they were in high school.
oh fascinating.
So I'm glad I missed out on that. But I was 10 when I got here, and I had finished 6. I was going to 7th grade.
Okay.
So
So tell me how our educational system managed that. So you guys come, bring the whole family to Burbank, or are
Yeah.
some of your siblings old
it's
enough?
basically myself and my closest to age brother
Okay.
and sister.
Okay.
The other ones were kind of
They're
all around the
older
place,
on their
and
own.
one stayed in Hong Kong for many years.
Okay.
But yeah, the 3 of us came as a package, basically.
Okay. So you land in Burbank, and your parents place you in the public school system?
Yeah, we're in
Burbank?
public schools, and that was when they had said they would suggest age-wise that I go back to 5th grade where the age was.
Okay.
So I redid basically 5th and 6th grade again.
Okay. And how
Yes.
was that?
It was really easy,
Okay.
and so I became kind of a problem.
Okay.
You
You weren't stimulated, and so you're bored, and you
Yeah.
started to maybe cause some trouble?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit? Okay. So what is young Robert Gostromides? Do we go by Rob? Do we go by Robbie? Do we go by?
Well, I was really, really obese,
Oh,
so it was always Big Rob.
Big Rob. Okay.
Like the opposite of like when you have a really big friend, you call him Tiny.
Okay.
They just, instead of calling me Fat Rob, they call me Big Rob.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. But you were clearly educationally ahead of the class.
Yeah,
So what do you do with your time if you're bored in school at this
just
point?
stupid stuff.
Stupid.
Yeah, just stupid stuff. So
Do you have a
like,
great relationship with the administration?
yeah, a little
Okay.
bit.
Okay.
But it was great because it was nothing like it was in Hong Kong.
Okay.
And I can't remember who I was just talking to about this, but maybe it was Allison. But, the head mistress when I was in school, I threw a Coke can out of a bus window one time coming back from like a soccer practice, and they were like, "You got to see her the next morning. We know it's you. People saw you do it."
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically her thing was you can either take, 5 swats
Is this in Hong Kong?
on the butt or 1 swat on the back of the hand, and it was like a yardstick.
Oh.
So when I got here and I realized they don't do that stuff, it was like open game.
Oh, boy.
Yeah,
Okay.
because
Well,
a
we're definitely
referral
going
and
to pull on this thread a little bit
Yeah.
as we go through the.
yeah, no, it was
Okay.
not good.
So you're interested in sport at all in the early times, or what happens when we go to junior high school?
Well, in Hong Kong, we played a lot of soccer, football, and then like a little bit of cricket.
Okay.
But there really wasn't much else.
Okay.
So when I came here, I started seeing them play with this weird shaped football, and then they're like, "Hey, big
fascinated by
kid,
that?
you hike this thing, you hike it for us." So that's kind of how it started with football.
What age were you when you picked up a
That's
football?
like 10, like 10,
Really?
11, yeah.
Okay, so were there...
I was like the designated center,
Okay.
which is funny because that ended up working out for me.
Well, yes, and,
Yeah.
and I do know that part of the story, so I'm
Yeah.
gonna hold the viewers in suspense just a little bit. So you start playing recreational football, or you?
No, it
playing
was just like
anything-
at school, like
just a school
recess
thing?
stuff. Yeah,
Okay, all
yeah.
right.
And then when I got to junior high school, people were playing like Pop Warner football,
Okay.
but all the weights were too light. So the max weight, I think it was like 155 pounds for like the Bantams or whatever it was. I don't even know how they classified that. And I was when I was, over that when I was 10. I was like 180 pounds already, and when I got there.
So how does that work in football? Do they then require you to play at a higher age?
No,
And
it wasn't
you
even an
can't-
option.
you
Like
can't do it?
155 was like the biggest one, and then you just went to high school.
They must have abandoned that at this point.
They have bigger ones now, yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Okay. All right, so school easy going into junior high, still doing well academically?
Yeah, a little bit of a jerk. 7th, 8th grade, seventh grade, because it was, remember, we used to go K through 6, and then it was 7, 8, 9, and then the high school when I started.
Right.
The next year they moved into the 9th
Yeah.
when I was in high school. So yeah, 7th and 8th, and then 9th I really started dialing it in a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any teachers along the way that, pulled you aside and said, look, you're too smart for some of these shenanigans that you're pulling?
Well, just to back it up, I think part of the problem too is we were always apartment livers, right? So like when they raised rent, you just moved. So like we moved and moved and moved and moved. So even when I got here at 10, I think I had 2 5th grade schools and I had 2 6th grade schools. So we bounced around a little bit. So just being able to find, some kind of like consistency was tough. So I had some good teachers, I mean, at the different spots, but not long enough to ever kind of cultivate anything. So
But as I understand it, you were at Burbank High School for the entire time you were in high school.
yeah, I went to John Muir Junior High School, and then Burbank High School, yeah, which feeds into that.
Okay. So we get to high school and football's our thing out of the gate?
Yeah, it's the only thing I could do.
Okay.
I mean, couldn't even do it, so it was just a thing. You're just big, you're gonna play football.
Okay.
And
And that was, and sometimes still is the way that football
yeah.
players are.
So 10th grade, that's how it started. The PE teachers would be like, "Hey, you got to go down and meet these coaches, and they're gonna play football," because you play some flag and stuff in junior high school.
Okay.
But we used to have this. I think the thing that was big for me was like every Friday we'd have this 300-yard run. And I think most junior high schools do that. Like certain days they run a quarter mile or something. And 7th and 8th, like I would always have PE during first lunch. And I don't know if you know how that works. Like
No.
you have a class going and you have first lunch going, and there's still half the schools in classes, and then they go back to class, and then all those classes go to lunch, right, to
Okay.
facilitate everything.
Okay.
So I would always have PE for some reason in 7th and 8th grade and 9th grade, all 3 years I felt, where you would have to run this run with all the people at lunch watching you. So it was pretty terrifying.
Okay.
Yeah. So being the last person doing that, and then finally in 9th grade, getting to the point where I could run a little bit more.
Okay.
I always tell this story. In the 5th grade, when I was 10, I was probably 4 feet 10 and 185 pounds. And then in the 10th grade, I was 6 feet tall and 180 pounds. So if it wasn't for that growth spurt, they would have been on that, they didn't have them back then, but my 600-pound life, they'd be cutting me out of my house, would be craning me out of the house, and I'd be eating, with a pizza in my mouth.
Oh,
So
I think there might be some other points along the way that make that not
no, the growth
possible.
spurt was huge because that kind of enabled me to move, you
Okay.
know, yeah.
And so they tell you to go down to the
Yeah.
field and meet these guys.
Yeah, so we
and
did that.
Are
And,
you interested in football, or
yeah.
are you just doing
I'm interested
what
in the
you're told?
idea of football, and I've talked to Dan about this before. Like, you all, when you're first getting into it, you watch football, you see it, and you want to put on the helmet and the pads and the neck roll. We used to wear neck rolls back then, and all the arm gear. But you don't really realize how awful that is to put all that stuff on. And then I had terrible coaches. So 10th grade, I played football at Burbank, and it's the worst experience of my life. It's the absolute worst experience of my life. Like, abusive coaches that were like just to this day.
Okay.
It's just they're horrible people.
Okay.
There's one main one, but like my
Well,
position
we can
coach.
skip that part. I don't think.
Yeah,
that we
no, I
need to
don't mind
actually-
saying his name,
But
but-
that, no, I think we shouldn't. We're going to find the good people
I've
in this
already-
story.
I've talked to him since then,
But despite the bad coaching environment, do you demonstrate an aptitude for this? Are you decent at this?
Yeah,
Early
yeah.
on.
No, and I think just because of size and everything else, I just became a starter and a guy. And then the next year, I became a varsity starter just from that. But we were 0-10. And I don't know how people know how hard it is to go 0-10. You have to be really, really good at being really bad. Your coaching has to be just awful.
We're gonna go there.
Your players have to just be awful.
We're gonna go there. Hold on a second.
But that's where, like, in spite of those first 2 years, yeah.
Okay, so you're decent at this center position.
No, I played like guard, and I don't know. I never really played center until.
Oh, okay. So you told me you're going to hike the ball back in
Yeah,
fifth
yeah, but
grade,
just a lineman,
and that
yeah.
kind of worked out. So we got to weave through the story.
Yeah,
here.
yeah. We'll get back. We'll get to that.
When you start playing football, they put you where?
I played guard.
Okay.
Yeah.
So lineman.
And I still didn't know what that. The coaching was so bad that I didn't really know. And even the next year in varsity, I didn't really know what was going on.
Okay.
You just ran around and.
So help me understand after 0-10, and then 0-10 second time. Is that what I heard?
No, 0-10, and then
Okay.
we fired the coaching staff, and then we got a coach named Dave Carson from Cal State Northridge. He was a defensive coordinator there, so he became our head coach, and it was the best thing that's ever happened to that school. And from that point on, they became a really competitive school
Okay.
for like the next 10 years.
Okay, so that was the reason why you came back, because the 0-10 season was not satisfying on any level.
Yeah,
Sounds
no,
like,
no,
but
awful.
and you wouldn't have continued with the coaching staff that.
Probably not. Yeah, yeah.
So this gentleman and his staff comes in, and how did you know it was going to be different?
It was just different from the beginning. Being a coach, that, like, just from organization, expectation, you got to be in the weight room at this time. You got meetings, like, it was so different.
Okay.
And then everybody, some people couldn't do it because they were so used to the other stuff that they would quit. So we got rid of a lot of the bad seeds,
Okay. And how did you function in this new system? Was
Oh, I love
this okay? So
Yeah.
this really resonated with you. This
Yeah,
style.
I think in general, most athletes crave structure and discipline. Even if they say they don't.
Well, I'm completely
Yeah.
agree, but
I
we're
know.
talking about you right
No,
now.
no,
So
no. It was good.
okay,
Yeah.
and so did you start to demonstrate some talent at this point?
Yeah, yeah. And then 5 games in, I tear an MCL, and so I only played half of my senior season. So
Wait. We're still in your sophomore year.
No, we're already past over. So my sophomore year was horrible.
So your freshman.
My first
or
year
your
in varsity, we were
your
0-10.
Junior year.
We went 0-10.
So you did this twice.
No, we won like 2 games our first,
Oh,
my
okay,
first year.
okay.
Then that first year in varsity was over. It still baffles me to this day to be able to go over. And then the senior year we went 5-5 and we're pretty good. But I only played half the games. So.
Okay. And were you still playing as a guard, or were you somewhere else?
Yeah,
on
I was
the
playing
line?
guard and I was playing both ways and playing defensive tackle.
Okay. So I didn't know that you tore your MCL.
Yeah.
And what was your intervention for that?
So they do that with those things. Is that you just have to immobilize it, right, and let it heal.
This was a long time ago, everybody.
Yeah. So they didn't trust me to put a brace on, so they casted me. Yeah. So I had a cast from my ankle to my hip
Oh my gosh.
for 2 months.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm in prom, pulling those slacks up over that thing.
The circumference of your thigh
Yeah,
was pretty.
yeah. So I had that on there for the whole thing, and then and it was okay. It seemed to heal all right.
Okay. So you're a senior. What are you thinking at this point? College? What do you think?
Yeah, I had talked to some IVs and some of the
Because you're that
like Air
good of a
Force, West
student
Point.
at this
Not
point?
really, but enough that they would give you a sniff. I don't think I would have ever made it past, any of the really nitpicky stuff, especially with the military
you're
academies.
An excellent student by all standards.
I'm a pretty good student. Pretty good student, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So, and were they looking at you for academics, or were they looking at you to
To-
play football?
Well, the academics would allow me to play football.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Okay. So, where were you setting your sights at this point?
anywhere. Whoever would take me. So, in spite of playing 5 games, I had enough film that I got a couple of recruiting visits.
Okay.
So I went to University of Texas, El Paso, and I went to New Mexico State. And Dan would know what these places mean. They're basically in the same place. You fly into El Paso for both. They call it the armpit of America. But I was excited, because you're there for a weekend and they're whining and dining you, and
Yes.
you've got a new jacket that you got at Miller's Outpost, and you're like stoked. And
Oh my
but
gosh.
neither of them offered me.
Okay.
So then I come back, and then I get an offer, scholarship to Cal State Northridge.
Oh, okay.
And so I signed the letter.
So now, is that at all a product of your coach's relationship with
I
the
think so.
staff?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So you get a scholarship to
This is so
Northridge.
boring, Lisa. This is boring stuff.
Oh, we're gonna get there. Oh, come on.
So anyway, so I signed there, and I'm going to go there. And back then, the scholarship was, it paid for all your tuition, all your books, and then I would just commute to school, right, from Burbank or whatever.
Okay,
So that's kind of what the full scholarship was at that level.
Okay.
So
Was CSUN Division II?
yeah, Division II.
Okay.
And it was good. It was a good program. They had, a lot of good. Mike Kane was playing there. He was an All-American there, and one of my other high school teammates was going there too.
Okay.
So one of my best friends. So that was going to be a nice thing. But I obviously didn't do that. So
And for whatever reason, you went a different route. So
yeah. So another coach had got in contact with me that was one of the assistants at Burbank High School on that really. No, he never coached me because that staff left when I was a sophomore, but he had always kind of kept tabs of me and a couple other people, and he said, you shouldn't go there.
okay.
And I was like, well, it's a scholarship,
Right.
And he said, you should go to Glendale College, because he had coached the year before, and then he was at UCLA at this time. And he said, you're a Division I player, you should just go do it, and you're a qualifier, and
increase your
yeah, and just go play, and
Okay.
you'll get a scholarship. And so I remember telling my dad that story, and my dad just could not understand that.
Right.
Right, 'cause
Money
he's
on
like-
the table versus
Yeah.
possibly getting money in the future. Okay.
Right. And then back then, it was the first year, 84 was the first year you had to pay to go to junior college, to community college. And it was $50 flat rate. That's what it cost. And my dad was like,
You need to go get the scholarship.
what are you going to do? Are you going to get a job
Right.
bouncing or
Right.
something? So books and $50 is what it was. Yeah, and I did that.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about your time at Glendale College, because this ended up to, as I understand it, be a pretty transformative time for you.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And it's a reason why I'm at this level now.
I know.
Was my experience there, for
let's
sure.
do that. Let's talk about that. So you land at Glendale College, and who are you being coached by at this point in your career?
A man named Jim Sartoris, who was a legendary coach, and his defensive coordinator was a man named John Sacudo, who became the head coach that I worked with later there. But when they recruited me, you know, obviously it was a big deal to get this kid that was supposed to go to Northridge and all this stuff. And for me, it was a really transformative time and a different time because I'm playing with people from everywhere. And back in those days, we had a really big pipeline into the inner city. So kids from Manual Arts and Dorsey High School and Crenshaw, we had all these kids. And so it was so different, you know, and it was awesome. It was very different though. It wasn't Burbank, you know, it wasn't Burbank High School. So yeah, we did that. And then,
And you guys were pretty good, as I understand.
we were pretty good. Yeah, pretty good my first year, really, really good the next year. And met a lot of really good people there.
But at this point, you move from guard and
I became a
defensive.
tackle. I
Okay.
became an offensive tackle.
Okay.
Just from size, like I just, you know, kept getting bigger.
Okay, we
and
are gonna
bigger,
we're
yeah.
gonna talk about the mass that you put on later.
Yeah.
but, so
It wasn't all good mass. by
Oh,
the way,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It wasn't all
right.
good mass.
But because today, what do you stand? 6'3", 6'4"?
6'3", yeah.
Okay. All right. So we
What?
kept growing after that.
Yeah, no, I'm just
freshman
talking
year
this
growth.
way.
No, I know
haven't
what
grown
you
that much
mean.
this way,
We're
yeah.
going to talk about
Yeah.
that a little bit, but you weren't a center at
No,
Glendale?
I wasn't. So my freshman year, school's really easy, by the way. It's really easy, right? Because it's community college.
Okay.
Right? It's nice, and you know, I got my offensive line coaches, my health teacher, and
Okay.
I'm taking all the 101s, the psych, you know. So everything was good, and it was very doable.
Okay. Despite the rigors of being an athlete and that schedule.
Yeah,
and
I got
everything.
1B my entire time there, and it was my offensive line coach that gave me that.
Good.
Yeah, so
I'm kind of secretly, yeah.
I would have done the same thing too,
Right, exactly.
because I didn't do anything. So halfway through my freshman year, I'm starting at tackle. Our center, who was one of my best friends, he got hurt, blew out his ACL. They say, "Hey, do you know how to hike this ball?" And I'm like, I don't know what that means because I'd never done it except for in
Fifth grade.
elementary school. Yeah.
I remember.
So I did that, and I ended up being all conference at center and like second team all state.
Wow.
And so the next year, we come back, and Mark, the center, is back, and he's way better than me. So they put him back at center, and they put me back at tackle. So that was good for me because I did not like it center.
Wow, you're just making this difficult because I happen to be, as does everybody else in the room, know that somehow you managed to have quite an impressive career at the center position.
Yeah,
So
a
help
little later.
us bridge the story of Glendale College to your eventual Division I scholarship.
Yeah, so back then, being a qualifier, you don't have to get your A or anything like that. You just got to, you know, get your transferable units. You know how it works. It still works that way, right? And now there's all the different degree things that are much tougher. So third semester is going to be my last semester, second season. I have scholarships, but they're not, I wanted to play in the Pac-10. So they weren't those kinds of scholarships. And so I said, I'm going to just stick around. It's like literally 15 weeks, play a season, and I'm going to go. I'm playing tackle. We have a great year. We're just loaded. We're Division I guys. I would liken that team to our 2004 team here,
Okay.
the national champions.
Okay.
Like we would play them pretty good, I think.
Okay.
I don't know. They were pretty monstrous here, and they had a really good strength coach. But I think,
That's what he wants to talk about.
yeah, let's talk about that. I want to talk about that team. Those
Okay.
teams are great.
I got you, I promise.
So, as the season goes on, I start getting recruited, really recruited. So probably, and my dad starts getting into that, which is really exciting for him.
Yeah.
Because, my parents had never gone to a game. They'd never seen me play football until junior college. They had never gone to a high school football game. Never, not one, and I started
What?
every single game except, the 5 that I didn't, yeah.
Oh my
It just
gosh.
wasn't a thing. So it wasn't the thing that I was not like, are you coming to the game tonight, Dad? So,
So you just be gone, doing your thing.
yeah, and I come back
And then you come
late on
back.
Friday night, be like, yeah, we lost. Like that kind of stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'd be like, oh, cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at some point they go, this is a big deal.
Yeah. So they
and-
start getting into it. I think with the scholarship, the CSUN
Yeah.
thing, then they're like, hey, maybe this kid's all right, So they start going to these games, and they're like the biggest fans. And then back then, they used to send telegrams. There was no emails and things like that. So if they wanted to get a hold of you, you get a knock on the door, and a guy would have a telegram and be like, "Hey, this is from Duke. They want to offer you a scholarship. This is Syracuse. They want to offer you a scholarship." So you get all these telegrams at your door, and then the answering machine. So my dad would literally come home from work, and he would press the answering machine and start writing down the schools.
He was proud of you. Yeah. How many offers do you think you had total?
Probably like 80. Probably like 80, yeah. Probably they say that there's probably the number one recruited offensive lineman coming out of junior college. So a bunch of schools that passed on me earlier out of high school because of size said, "Oh no, that's not a thing anymore." And literally, I was the same size. Like it was the same. It was just a different. I was a much better player. So, so I get it. But yeah, so it was fun.
So why did you select UC Berkeley?
So you had 5 recruiting visits, and I said I was going to pick one on the East Coast, I would pick one in the South, in the dirty South, and then I was going to pick 3 in the Pac.
Okay.
Right? And you don't get, not everybody's giving you a scholarship. So I went to Syracuse in December on my visit.
Maybe
so that
the
was
SoCal boy wasn't going to
that was a tough one.
Okay.
With a new jacket, a new denim jacket from Miller's Outpost.
Miller's Outpost, okay.
And the minute I get there, all the guys there are like, "You're from California." Like you understand what's going to happen in the next 48 hours, do you? And that's when I had, the button flies.
Oh, yeah.
And that's when you realize the wind goes through the button flies. That was a great visit. A guy named Dick McPherson was the head coach and ended up being the coach of the Patriots. They ended up winning a national championship the next year. So I didn't do that. And then Alabama.
Wow.
And that was a unique thing. And what I took away from that was coming home and saying, what was the thing you think about that trip? And I said, I did not see one person that looked like me for 72 hours.
Yeah.
You were black or you were white. Mm-hmm. If you're a Gardner, you're black. Like there was anybody looked Hispanic or Asian or Pacific Islander or anything. Yeah. So that was different. I knew I didn't want to go there. And then Arizona State, Washington, and Cal.
Okay.
And then Cal just fit, as far as like the weather, being over 300 pounds, the weather was nice. Tempe, Arizona did not sound good.
Okay.
At 305 pounds, it did not sound good.
Okay.
And the academics and everything else, yeah.
Yeah.
I like the uniforms are nice.
Great colors.
Yeah.
Blue and blue.
The Bear Claw.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so Mr. School's So Easy, you just ended up at one of the top universities in the country.
Yeah.
So how'd we adjust?
We didn't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so my very first semester I get in there, was basically the spring of my second year of college. And
Transfer your sophomore year, mid-year,
mid-year.
to give yourself some time to acclimate to this new level, the team, all that kind of stuff. Okay.
Yeah,
really
it was
smart when you can do it. This is a really good.
Yeah, you need it. Like as a junior college transfer, you need that if you're going to try to become a starter.
Right.
But yeah, it was an eye opener. It really was. It was I think when I had 17 required textbooks in my first history class, like 6 of them were novels. So like just timepieces from those the periods that we had. So I had a 2.00000, like it was O, and it basically helped me avoid not going on a probation, because then I would have been in trouble, because then I would have come back in the fall with football season and had to raise that up. Yeah. So it was an adjustment period and tutors and everything else, but it was on top of that, my head was spinning from the guys just being way better than me and just pummeling me at practice in the spring. And you're just like, I'd be on the phone with my dad, like, maybe I should have went to the CSUN. Why did I come here? I'm not as good as they say I am. So it was one of those adjustment periods where it was nasty,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I think that that's a common, we talk to our athletes after they transfer and they get these awesome situations. And it's a jump, but it's also a jump because you're not at home, you don't have your normal support system, you're having to figure out how to navigate this
Right.
whole thing on your own. So the team's good. And
The players are very good, yeah.
you're trying to find your way. So do we start? Are we in the conversation? Because sounds like there's a move to the center
Yeah, not
position.
right away for
Okay.
sure. So it's a process, and it eventually worked out. You know,
Okay.
became a starter, and I started every game there, and it was nice. It worked out well. You know.
That's kind of a humble transition. You went from, oh my gosh, I'm getting my butt kicked, to
Yeah,
it
you
worked
have
out.
to adjust to
I'm
the
a
speed and everything else.
starter,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. So was this an awakening to what it took to be a Division I athlete?
Yeah,
Did
and
you
that-
have to change your lifestyle?
It did, and it became a thing where I became best friends with our strength coach, and that's kind of where I started, getting a lot of that interest with strength and conditioning.
So tell me a little bit about this person.
So, his name is Robin Pound. They call him the Messiah because he kind of looks like Jesus, but he's kind of a nut job.
Okay.
I would tell him that. Everybody knows that he is to this day. But he was an old track guy.
Okay.
So like learning from that, a little skinny track guy. But his whole thing was, understanding that, there's a science to this. It's not just like, because I came in and I was really strong and, working out with like the bodybuilders and the professional wrestlers and stuff like that and just getting all yoked up. But just understanding that, hey, can you do pull-ups? Can you jump? Can you sprint? That kind of stuff. So that became a thing, and I ended up really changing my body, losing about 20 pounds or so, 25 pounds, and then becoming stronger and, being able to play at that level.
Leaner.
Yeah.
Okay. And in conversations that we've had over the years, there's a point at which, you decide that you're going to make a significant change to the way you eat, too, right? And when did that happen?
Not till after
Oh,
college.
not until after
Yeah,
football.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So
I
is
was
that-
setting records in college.
yeah.
Like I was entering every taco eating contest and pizza eating contest. Yeah.
See, I did not know.
Yeah, I
this.
wasn't great
Okay.
at it. I would
Okay.
always get beat by a little guy, but I was pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So there was no change in the eating and everything like that until your
No,
football
not
career
until
was over.
not until
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So the strength and conditioning piece influenced you. You started to see some changes in your own body. You started to see how the methodology made a difference.
Yeah, like
right?
understanding like programming and the coupling of like the weight room plus all the stuff on the plyometrics and all that stuff. Like
Because at this point you're a sociology major, is that correct? Or history major.
history, essentially,
History.
yeah.
Okay.
Like social sciences.
And what was the intent? What was your kind of game plan when you go to graduate?
And Allison will appreciate this. I wanted to be an elementary school teacher.
Okay.
That being said, I was a pretty solid NFL prospect coming out my last year. But there was this thing where maybe I should rewind. So after my junior year, I start every game and everything else, and then I go into spring ball and I get demoted to second string, and it goes back to some stuff that happened in Japan on our last game of the year, my junior year.
Okay.
We probably don't need to get into that.
Okay.
But I got in some trouble in Japan, and so when I came back as part of this punishment, the coach said, "You're now a second string. We're going to move this kid that's never played center. He's going to be a center."
Okay.
So I end up getting my knee scoped in the spring, so I didn't go through most of the spring. And then summer camp comes and I'm second string after being a starter,
Okay.
right?
But you
Which
knew
is,
it.
Which is, yeah.
This was communicated to you. You knew that this was going to happen.
I saw it happen in front of me
okay,
with no actual reason why.
So it was never, those two things never were tied together. You
Right.
just assumed. Okay. All right. So how do you feel about that?
Well, I was telling Allison the other day, if today, with NIL and transfer, I would have made a lot of money and gone somewhere else. I would not have been a Berkeley grad for sure. But you kind of are stuck. So you're like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
So other than coming back and going down a level, Division II or 1AA or something. So I just stuck it out, just figuring they'd have to play the best guy, right? They'd have to do that. So they ended up doing it. And then at the end of the camp, when you do your stretch lines, the kid that's in front of me, takes my helmet, it's like a gesture. You take their helmet, put it there, and then you sit in the front of the line where I sat before anyway. And he was just taking up that space. And so I get a thing saying, I have all these things for media day. The Oakland Tribune, the San Francisco Chronicle, they all want to interview you. You're going to interview and I was like, wait, what's going on? So I go into these interviews, and the first person, this lady from the Chronicle, goes, so what does it feel like being Bruce Snyder's experiment? And I was like, what do you mean? And he says, yeah. He said, you were underachieving. So he said there's two ways to motivate somebody. You give them everything, and you make them feel good about themselves, or you take everything in their lives away from them, and you see if they respond. And I was like, what a jerk off. That's just a horrible thing. So I remember my offensive line coach treating me a certain way during that whole process that was really weird, like really kind of distant when we weren't. And then I remember when I finished my senior year and, was once again did well, and he had called me and he said, hey, I'm really sorry for that. But that's just what we do here. It's at this level, we got to do this. And then at that point I said, I don't want anything to do with this level. I don't want to coach at this level at all.
Okay.
I just want to go back to, junior college and coach,
Okay.
where I can coach without, that kid running around with my paycheck in his mouth,
Yeah.
Okay. So that's kind of.
So you didn't consider going NFL at this point?
I didn't. I had some free agent stuff, and then I just said, I was just so jaded from everything. I said, I want to graduate.
And you want to be a different coach than you experienced.
I want to be an elementary school teacher.
Okay.
And like kindergarten cop style, and then coach after school.
Oh, because that might have been a thing right about that time.
Yeah, it was. I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's, it's an easy, I could tell you why that didn't work, the elementary school thing, if you want to.
Well, I just know that you didn't end up at the elementary school level.
Yeah.
But you did teach K through 12 for
Yes.
a bit, and you landed in PE, right?
Yeah, so when I got done with my degree and I came out and started doing stuff, I started seeing what these coaches, what their degrees were at Glendale College. And, they would teach these classes, and they taught health, and they taught first aid, and they taught these activity classes. And I was like, this is kind of cool. I kind of want to do this. So then I said, what do I got to do? Well, you got to go get your master's in PE kinesiology. And I was like, well, I don't have any of that background. So I spent a whole year at CSUN taking all the kind of prereq stuff to get in the program, and then got into the program there and did that, and then sat there for 5 years waiting for one of these jobs. You know how these jobs are gold. So being an adjunct and doing that kind of stuff for those years, and then you're like, I gotta eat, I gotta get insurance, I gotta get my teeth cleaned, right? So you take a job, and I took a job as a high school head football. Well, I took a job in the junior high school. I've taught every level of PE, by the way.
Right.
Right. So adapted PE in the elementary school level. The junior high school was my first job, 1 year there, and then 4 years at the high school as a football coach.
So you went to the high school level, were you a PE teacher and a football coach? Okay, and you went back to your alma mater?
I went to Burroughs.
Oh, you went to
my
your
rival.
rival high school.
Yeah.
Is that a purposeful decision? Or?
No, I tried to get to Burbank. I didn't. They applied for the job. I didn't get it when it opened, but it wasn't a full-time job anyway, so it worked out better at Burroughs. Yeah.
Okay. So, talk to me about your coaching philosophy. How did your experience as an athlete inform your coaching philosophy once you started to run your own program?
It's just more like I think you just coach how you would like to be coached, right? It's kind of a cliche, right? When they say that, be the coach that you would have wanted. That's how, whether it's demanding or not, it's fine. Like, you could be demanding and you can ride me as long as it's fair,
Clear expectations.
And there's the communication of what's happening. So that's kind of where I was as a high school, as an assistant at Glendale College, and then as a high school head football coach, and kind of overseeing all the lower levels and everything, just kind of trying to have it's really hard because they're all just walk-on coaches and, part-time coaches, so to get them to do the same thing. And it was very rewarding at Burroughs. We played for a Football League championship against Hart, against the Harrington brothers right here at COC. My last year, I had like maybe 25 guys. So it was a very
25
rewarding.
guys on the team?
On my varsity team, yeah.
And you played for a league
championship.
championship with 25 guys?
Yeah, we only lost to Notre Dame that year, and that was maybe the best Notre Dame team they've had. And then we lost to Hart.
Wow. So
Yeah.
how did you keep all these guys healthy? Had you started to dip your toe
It's that strength and
into
conditioning.
strength and conditioning
Yeah,
at this point?
We ran.
Oh,
We were very conditioned. We were
when
very
you met
conditioned.
me,
Yeah.
you were like, you are not allowed to run your volleyball play.
Yeah, we're not running the mile anymore.
But so when did the strength and conditioning thing?
It started at Glendale because
Okay.
there's nobody that does it at that level. Like, I'm the first full-time person in the history of the state.
system.
So, and that was 99. So, we're talking about 89, 90, 91. Like, it was just like whatever football coach draws the short straw, gets to do the weights, or the one that knows it, or the one that's kind of like buff. He does the weights, like high school now. But yeah, I started doing it and started going back to all the stuff we did at Cal, started to try to implement that, and then started going to clinics and started going and meeting the SC and UCLA coaches at their clinics and talking to people. And that's where I met a guy named Rob Rogers, who was the head strength coach at USC. And he's the one, actually, we've become very good friends since that time. He's the one that actually, put on my jacket for the Master Award. I can't remember that, 2013 or something. But just learning that, and then back then was very different. You learn from journals, books, VHS tapes.
Yep.
No social media,
Yep.
no,
And a few gurus around the country
yeah.
who were pretty cutting edge at the time.
Right, and they would have, but they usually would have like
Garmin.
products or like you'd see them at a clinic or something. Yeah.
So in the early 90s, you're still coaching football, but you're starting to cultivate this interest that you have in strength and conditioning. And at what point did you start to realize that you clearly had a gift on this front? Because you're good at football, but at some point you started to realize that this is clearly where my aptitude and my interest lies.
I don't think it was till I got here.
Okay.
So when football started here in 1998, I get a phone call from Chuck Lyon, and he says, "Hey, I heard you step down at Burroughs. Would you want to coach here? I know you live out here." And I said, "Yes, I want to coach there." So I came on part-time, and that's when I met you for the first time and everybody else that was here. And then that was the point where it's like, but I need you to take over this and run this football thing because, we're going to put a new weight room in and build that new weight room and all that stuff that we did. So it was that, and then the next year, obviously, flying that position would mean that I would no longer be coaching football. So
Yeah.
I was okay with that at that point. I felt like I was better probably at strength and conditioning than football.
Okay.
But I did miss it for the first, 5 or 6 years of doing
Yeah.
that, yeah.
Yeah. But you honestly pretty much hit the ground running because I remember meeting you. I, in full disclosure, had a strength coach that was attached to my program at the time. We had gone to graduate school together because that's how we all functioned at the time. We all kind of had our own strength coaches. And I remember meeting you and chatting with you, welcoming you, and you got your job and just talking with you. And when you found out where I'd gone to grad school, you'd known one of the people that I had studied under, and you clearly had crossed paths with him. And that started a conversation. And my strength coach moved on after that first year, and I came to you and I said, "So what do you know about volleyball?" And do you remember what you said?
Probably I know about every sport.
No, that's not exactly what you said, but you did say something jokey. You said, "Well, not that much, but how hard could it be or something like that? And that's sort of been the banter that we've been dealing with for the last 25 years, has it not, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to put you on the spot because I'm going to tell you straight up, I think that you came to love volleyball, even though you didn't know that much about it
Well,
at the time.
it's like any of these sports, right? Like I didn't know. I mean, when you're a strength coach, you look at, like you do a needs analysis and you look at movement.
Right.
Then you look at energy systems, and then you go from there and you say like, what are injury mechanisms that happen, and then it's kind of easy because it's just plug and play at that point. So once I got in tune with that, and that's when I started going and doing some of those clinics. Remember the volleyball clinics, and then hearing all those coaches still doing the mile test and stuff, and I was like, what are we doing? It was in the little booklets, like this is what you should do with your players. And I was like, oh my god. So I felt like there was a lot to be done there. It's like kind of like baseball today, even it's like caveman stuff. So, I loved volleyball.
But I also think that was the first time, because I was all about strength and conditioning. Like I had come from a graduate program
You
that
came
was
from Garhammer and
all about
understanding
strength and
Olympic
conditioning.
lifts and everything. Yeah.
So, I was like, Long Beach State was winning national championships in volleyball when I was in graduate school. So I was like, we need to be doing what they're doing. And we've had a few funny conversations over the years like that. But you kind of made it a focus. Like you made sure that you knew how to train volleyball. But I think that this was, if I'm not mistaken, one of the first times that you'd started working with female teams. Is that true?
Yeah, I did a little bit at Glendale here and there, and then I did some of the stuff at the high school for some of the other sport teams. But and honestly, like the thing that's the most enlightening thing to me, and when I try to explain to people that when they say, what's it like, at the height of everything, 350, 400 athletes a day going through from every different background and men versus women. And you can't even say men versus women because I used to say like my women were so different from team to team, right? And I say, and I would illustrate it by like how they come in and what they're wearing when they come in, right? And just like the attitude and everything else. So, when I go from volleyball and then basketball comes in, it's like a whole different animal. And then softball comes in, and then soccer. So it's very different in track. So it all just comes down to just, like I said, that needs analysis and dealing with that. And then also the culture, that team looks like how hard can I turn the screws on, the girl, on your girls versus if I did some of the stuff and we demanded like we would on some of your teams and I would do it to, say, softball a certain year, there'd be tears and hurt feelings, that kind of stuff. So same with men, same with the guys sports.
Absolutely. So you start rolling. We start getting pretty darn good around here. Obviously, the district made an investment in a lot of full-time head coaches, which contributed significantly to our success. But we're pretty darn fit.
Yeah.
We're pretty fast. We're pretty strong, and we start having some athletes really separate themselves from the pack. How many strength and conditioning All-Americans have you had in your time?
Well, we would always have, we'd always do a male and a female here, but volleyball had the most, I believe, right? I feel like we had,
that wasn't me
yeah,
fishing
no, but I
for
feel like we did.
compliments for my program.
It was just one of those things where it just would vary. There'd be years where there would, I'd have a baseball guy instead of a football guy, which would be crazy, or even a basketball guy. So it just depends on like that team and that culture, that team that year, and how that dynamic worked. And also, like, I'd also say, like, what kind of value did that athlete have on that team? Like, what did he bring? Was he a leader? That kind of stuff. So that was all part of that award. But we had a lot of them, and we were always the only community college that, because I was here. So they'd be, those kids would be right up there alongside South Carolina and Florida State and UCLA and everything else. And it was a pretty cool thing.
Oh, no, it was very cool, and cool to watch, cool to be a part of. And then in 2006, you were the National Strength and Conditioning Coach of the Year, right? For all college levels, all the way up through Division I. That was huge. Huge for you, but also huge for our level. Like, that was insane. So tell me a little bit about what that was like.
when I remember looking back at my interview packet when I interviewed, I don't know if I ever showed you that, and one of the things was my goals. And I said, within, 5 years, we're going to be known as a place that has cutting edge. Like, we're going to be known and people are going to be coming here. And we would have the Niners coaches were here before. I've had New Zealand rugby here. We've had people come from out of the blue to hang out for the day or for the weekend or stay for a week. I've had a British, English soccer team come, like just to watch us do this stuff at this little podunk place, So it was pretty.
Podunk anymore.
Not anymore. It's nice now.
Yeah.
Not then.
Yeah.
And Colleen and Dan know that old weight room for sure.
We've got pictures.
Yeah. So does Jesse.
Yeah.
This is the weight room's pretty. It's pretty new and nice now. So.
I know.
But yeah.
But come on, like, there's how many strength conditioning coaches across the country in the middle 2000s, and you're selected the national.
Well, and
strength
it's kind of
and
cool
conditioning
because
coach of
that
the
it was
year.
actually voted on by our peers
Yeah.
back then too. They don't do that now. It's like a system of like points
Oh,
and everything else.
really?
Yeah.
Oh.
But that was kind of cool. That was the case.
I think it's really cool, and I
Yeah.
think you're trying to be humble. But I as I think about your career and having been, a friend and colleague through it, it seemed to me that that's about the point. You were clearly doing lots of things. You were presenting and, lots of things. But I feel like that's when your national and even international profile really, really took off. Because, all of a sudden, we've got interns from all over the place that are coming. I'd walk into the weight room and I'd meet 3 new people that are interning with you because they want to study under you. So how many, if you think about it roughly, how many people have you mentored over your career that have gone on to be strength and conditioning coaches, certified strength and conditioning coaches?
I feel like all my interns have, and even people that have shadowed, like a Mike Uden or something that didn't intern with me technically, but was with me more hours than most of the interns were over the course of a couple of years. But they're almost all are in the field. Almost all are certified coaches, doing well. So that's a nice thing. I used to hate interns. Like, I don't know if anybody's ever had them, but like, I used to just see them as work, right? Because you're like, I gotta teach them this and I gotta watch them do this. And then it got to the point where I can't remember, maybe it was Matt. I can't remember. It was one of those years where I just said, I'm just gonna throw them in the fire, right? And just, instead of being like, go clean up the weight room, like, okay, you're gonna do this and you're gonna lead the warm up and you're gonna take this softball team through the whole thing today. And they'd be like, wait, what? I remember Dave remembers he did that to Katie, and she got so good at it so quick, and I'm like, I'm just gonna do that. Just throw them in there, If they fail, then they fail. But
Well, did you get to choose who interned with you?
yeah,
So you clearly were not picking
but I
the
mean,
people that were going to fail.
but I had a lot of them that had gone through our system. But I've had a couple like just through CSUN. They've done well, but they just wouldn't. It's different when you're like a cougar and you've been through this stuff before and you've seen it and experienced it. You're back. You're
So
back for a reason.
Are we talking 20?
Gosh, I don't know. There's
30?
been I probably had 20 at least over those years. And like I said, almost all of them have gone into this stuff, and some might not still be in it, but they all did pretty well, I think. Some are doing really well in this room.
I know.
Yeah.
That's why they're here. They're here because they, I would imagine, in no small part, attribute their career choice and their current success to you.
Yeah, like I didn't have a chance to have that, that thing, because I was thrown in. So like, you're gonna do this, and we'll pay you for a weight training class or something to do it. So I had no way to know if it was right or wrong or bad or good. You just kind of winged it. So I think that's the nice thing about having it, being able to shadow somebody or be in a system where,
Absolutely.
you have the guidance to be like, don't do that. Don't do that again,
and The difference, having been in other people's environments, training environments, is just the attention to teaching that, no new movement was ever introduced without a full contextual explanation of why we're doing it, what it's supposed to accomplish, how we do it, where are the pitfalls, what are the things that we're looking for. And even interacting with some of the people that you've mentored in their professional careers, that attention to detail persists. And I think that kind of is what not only sets you guys apart in terms of your practice, but I think it also, in my opinion, sets you guys apart in terms of the success that you've had with the athletes, the attention to detail. So Garhammer, who I studied under, and I was not a strength conditioning coach. That wasn't my focus, but he was my biomechanics professor and the strength coach at Long Beach State. He was absolutely fastidious about those sorts of things. He's like you. He could look from across the room and look, making minor adjustments in range of motion, considerations. But that makes tremendous differences in what, the athletes can do. And I think that you modeling it and then you expecting that from your interns, that's translated into them, frankly, being better at their craft.
Yeah, I think just kind of just putting their feet in the fire a little bit, to do it and not be in this protected environment so much,
Yeah.
Like not day one, obviously, but as they get in.
No, but like you say, have you come through the Cougar strength culture, you kind of know what you're doing. So let's talk about some crazy experiences. Any fun weight room experiences? I have a fun story. I'm not going to name the athlete, but I recruited an athlete who was an exceptional volleyball player, and I thought an exceptional athlete, and you did not like her at all. And you
We can
told
name her.
me...
Why not we name her? She's one of my favorite people in the world.
You did not think that you could work with her, and I told
hated her.
you
God, I hated her.
that you just needed to give
She
her
was the
a
biggest.
chance.
I mean, you want to talk about like a brat,
Okay.
and just a really talented, athletic brat.
Okay.
And it was, I can't even remember what it was that changed that, but
I remember just saying, you know what, just give her a chance. I think this is
yeah,
gonna
and
be
I was
okay.
like, no, that's not going to
No,
work.
you were very resistant to this whole thing.
Because I didn't think she had it in her to even like flip it all or to, she was very stubborn.
Yes, I wonder, why you guys might butt heads. I don't know, but
Yeah, it reminds me of my daughter a little bit.
and did she or did she not end up being one of your
Yeah.
most successful female athletes?
She was actually my first time that I think we told you that we would be testing. I said, just so you know, like a world-class no-step vertical jump is 25 inches for a female, and she's going 26. And everybody's like, wait, what do you mean? I go, yeah, world class. Like, I'm not having an approach or anything. I'm just saying, like, this is how powerful she was. And she was long. So it wasn't like your typical package, and we weren't looking to jump touch height, but like, it was pretty crazy. She was pretty special.
Yeah. So just some fun times between you and me, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Brianna.
Yeah, that would be the one I was thinking about.
Yeah.
They weren't always, as successful.
No, but we had some good ones. We had some funny ones.
Yeah, you've had some pretty exceptional athletes. What are some of the most significant transformations from day one to out the door?
Gosh, we have a lot. Domata Peko would be one, for sure. Isaac Sopoaga is one, but I feel like that's that's cheating because these guys, they come from the islands and they're literally balls of clay, lazy balls of clay. So there's a lot that you have to kind of like ingrain in them, and if they turn the corner, then they become, Hall of Famers like Domata's gonna be. So like, but in terms of females, we've had so many female athletes come through that have. I think that one of the cool things, and was talking to Phil and Justin, our soccer coaches, about this going over the years. We've had girls that didn't start at their high schools that come here and become all conference and get 4-year scholarships that didn't start at their high schools. We've had that in football.
Yeah.
We've had kids that come in and their coaches go, "He'll never play for you, coach. You could take him. He's a good kid, but he's never going to play." And they end up being Division I guys. We had a player come out of El Camino High School in the Valley, and we gray shirted him because he was just so awkward, and end up being a starter for us on our national championship team, and ended up starting, every game at Michigan State, and it's pretty incredible. And I call him throwaways. He was a throwaway,
Yeah.
like even a Pierce or Valley wouldn't recruit him.
Yeah. And, so much of the success is obviously their team and their coaches in that program, but it's the taking somebody who obviously is athletic, but frankly making them more athletic, and in my opinion, far more resistant to injury. That is, I think, the biggest part that the coach values is, just the resiliency, the ability to handle the load, the rigor of being an athlete, and to do it well fatigued. I mean, that was always our badge of honor, is if we're going 5 sets, we like our chances, because nobody else is going to be as fit as we are.
And you've seen it, over the years, just in terms of like, if you have conditioned athletes, they're just not going to break down as bad as as quickly, for sure. So that's why we just hang out. There's one thing we can control. There's only one single thing we can control, and that's their energy systems, their actual conditioning. So if you don't do that, I think then you're doing a disservice to any of your teams. You're leaving that off the table, and that's the one thing I can't control necessarily. I can get you a little bit faster, a little bit stronger, but like that component, that work capacity part is like the big one.
But people never believe me when I say that we lifted every day except when we traveled. We even lifted before
games,
home games. Yeah. It wasn't a lot. The volume wasn't, a lot. But obviously the rationale for that is as much nervous system as it is, work capacity.
The nervous system, really,
And, a fun story for me is, sending a woman to the Pac-10, that's how old. And she goes up there to Washington State, and she's teaching them how to lift. She goes to a Pac-10 Division I program, and they don't have as sophisticated a strength and conditioning program as we had here. That was...
I mean, they have nicer facilities for sure, but...
I don't know if they did then, but, they clearly didn't know how to utilize them as well. But that, when your athletes come back and they're telling, your recruits what it's like, that you're going to be ready to go, that you're going to not be behind when you go to the next level. That was a huge selling point.
Yeah, one of the fun things with football was when our kids would go off to different places, and then when they get there, they'd say, "Where'd you come from?" They go, "College of Kansas." Like, "Oh, okay, good. You know what to do in here, So that's kind of cool.
Absolutely. So if you had to identify, professionals that were really influential in your career path, who would you identify? Positive or negative, I suppose, but positive. Who inspired you to get into teaching?
The coaching, the guys that were my mentors at Glendale College, for sure. John Sacudo, who's still one of my very, very good friends. Jim Sartoris. Because I got to work, I was always terrified of John Sacudo when I played there, because he was really a scary coach, the defensive coach.
Are all football coaches scary, like fundamentally?
Defensive coaches are scary, I think.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
I think they're scarier.
Okay.
Maybe offensive line coaches sometimes. But but when I got to work with him, he taught me so much about just the logistics of, running the team, and the scheduling of stuff, and everything that helped me, especially when I went to high school and did that. But I think what really made me a good coach here and a teacher here is my experience with K through 12 PE.
Yeah.
Just the structure and the rigor of all that made it easy. The middle school thing, just from a stress standpoint and I don't know if I can do this, maybe I'll sell insurance standpoint, to go to the high school, from going to Pasadena to going to high school in Burbank, was night and day. Okay. It was like, I just felt like I was walking into like the best and nicest kids ever,
Really?
And then that workload and that, weight training class, and then coming to here, obviously it was even easier, in terms of like the stress of it, I guess.
And then on the strength conditioning side, who would you, if you had to pick like 3 people that are really...
My strength coach at Cal, for sure, because he's the one that put
the runner?
Yeah, Robin Pound, the one that put that little thought in my head about doing this. But I've had a lot of people that have influenced me in the field, tons and tons of them, that still do. I'm actually doing a clinic with one alongside him in June, Lee Taft, who's like the godfather of speed. Everything about just the breakdown of, body positioning and reactive stuff and all the chaos stuff that I've done. That's been him. And then Rob Rogers, that coach I talked to you about, that was at USC, was very influential with all this stuff that he's done.
So I know, but for our listeners, what are your thoughts on continuing education? How do you feel about the need to continually grow and evolve as a professional?
You think you have to, right? It's like there's I hate this. It's a great quote, but I'm not going to say who said the quote because it kind of jades the quote now. But it's basically, the quote kind of says, if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. Right? There's no such thing as staying the same because somebody else is going to be getting better that you're going to be coaching against. So without at least seeing, like reaffirming what you're doing, right? So if you're coaching a certain way and you're doing a certain practice style and, game management and all that, and then you go and see another coach at UCLA or something and they go, we do this, and you're like, oh, I do that. Like, you're like, it's nice to be reaffirmed.
And all of us steal. All
right.
coaches steal.
But it's also important to when you hear new things, to say like, hey, maybe there's something there. Like I changed my entire programming for every sport after we won our national championship, and I was presenting at a clinic, and 2 legendary coaches came up to me afterwards and said, hey, that was really awesome. It was a great program, but did you ever think that you might have been overtraining your guys? And, I'm driving home. I'm in Florida, and I'm driving back home to the hotel, and I'm like, if these guys asked me that, there must be a reason, So then when I started looking at it, I was like, wow, I just crushed these guys. Like it was.
How ironic is this? Because that year is the year.
Yeah.
I think that I asked you if we could not lift before a match, and you were so mad at me.
Yeah.
But we were chewed up. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, I think in spite of some of the things that I did, we won a national championship and had there's no injuries. How many years did I say, I don't do ACLs and I don't do hamstrings?
Yeah.
I just don't.
Yeah.
We just don't do them.
We don't.
And we didn't do them.
Yeah.
And then you hear about other schools getting 7 of them in a football camp. And you're like, it's no longer a coincidence,
Yeah. But you're right. It's so often that, you as a coach, you look at what somebody else is doing and you want to figure it out, right? You want to figure out why that's working or how you could incorporate that. I tell all my students that good coaches shamelessly steal, overtly steal, call people up and ask, how is that working?
I think it's fine. Anybody could take anything. I just think, when people ask me where I got it from, I tell them.
Oh, yeah,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
But there's a lot of people that don't do that.
Oh, like they came up with it.
Yeah. There are definitely a lot of people, especially nowadays.
Yeah. Well, I want to field some questions. I know we have some questions from the audience, so let's see what our friends and family members would like to ask you. So, we've got a few.
That's too long.
No, these are good. Oh, I love these. Thank you.
Jeez, guys.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
It's not mandatory.
Okay, so we're going to start. Ooh, I love it. Oh, my goodness. Okay.
Anybody
We're going to start with this one. What's the biggest difference in strength and conditioning training techniques from 20 years ago to now? You can make it sport specific if you want.
From 20 years ago to now, I mean, we know a lot more now. 20 years ago is not that long ago, really.
Well, for
That's
you
what's
and
crazy.
me, it's not that long.
I know, but we were having so much success, and we were really transforming a lot of.
So one
physically
thing I've
transforming.
observed, and maybe this is just anecdotally, it seems like, but there seems to me much stronger emphasis on mobility and less on like total weight lifted.
Yeah, so I was going to say, so if it's the addition of the awareness of the importance of mobility, restoration, and then there's been a huge, probably around 2006, 7, 8, there was a really big influx of influence from physical therapy into strength and conditioning. So sports med, physical therapy coming in and kind of like almost kind of working together more than having two separate entities. So a lot of the program you see would take that in part, mobility is part of that, obviously, but just assessment and stuff like that, so yeah, for sure, like just less meat-headed-ish, I guess, if that's a term, but like less of that whole thing of like chasing those numbers, Like I always said, like even with the volleyball girls, once we stopped, when I took the records down, they all got broke. Like they would just get broken in training and on their workout cards, and we'd have that record that was up there, all of a sudden a girl would be doing it for a triple in training. It wasn't a thing that we weren't like chasing it and spending a huge time period trying to work on like, let's get maxes this week. We just did it, and part of it was that programming thing that allowed us to do that. So you could be, going to state and setting a record, just part of our training. So.
These are some great questions. So you're going to have to be succinct because I want to get to them all.
We don't have to do them all, do we?
I think we should. As a former student athlete, what are some skills you've taken from the football field to the classroom?
Discipline, for sure. I mean, that's we always say, and it's a cliche, right? You say like, it's more than it's more than the sport, right? We're not just trying to build great athletes. We're trying to build better people. I think that's a huge one. Just the discipline and the teamwork aspect, and there's just so much to any sport, as far as being part of a team, part of a culture. Definitely will have that, effect on your academics for sure.
And, I think I've been in your classrooms before. I've observed you and, evaluated you. And I think you create that sort of a culture in your classroom too, that sort of, team, we're all in this together. No question's a bad question. Let's figure this out kind of a thing. I see that in your work. What would you say is one of the most memorable times in your life where you felt you had a lot of growth?
The retirement?
Oh,
No.
you notice I didn't ask you about
I know.
that, but
Hasn't happened yet. That retirement part.
No.
Probably. I don't know. I really felt like when I got this full-time job, it like changed everything. It gave me a whole different outlook on my career. Obviously, it was I was a full-time teacher. I could have stayed at that, but I was way more motivated. It gave me a chance to. I don't know if I even still have them, but I have this, the old zipper books that you open up, like with the old CDs, but had the little discs in them.
Yeah.
And I would have the volleyball one and the soccer one. I'd stick it in the floppy, like just having all those things, and then constantly changing stuff. And that was like the beginning of even using all those spreadsheets for all our stuff. And
we just had this conversation.
I just remember how crazy motivated I was, and I'm like, I can't believe I got so motivated for that. But at that time, it was such a huge thing. I couldn't get up early enough, couldn't stay late enough, to just get better at all those things.
At everything, at every little thing, right?
Yeah.
Getting it ready, getting it set up. I remember.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's two on this one. I'm going to choose one of them. What's your best advice for younger coaches when beginning your career?
Continuing ed, right? I mean, I think that's really important. like seeing what's out there and constantly looking to change. You don't change for the sake of change, but there
Do you
might be a
think the
reason to change
mentor
some things.
is a key element to starting out?
Yeah,
I do too.
I think so.
I think so.
And part of the thing, like for the CSCCA with the collegiate strength coach, is it's basically like the CSCS exam, but then there's a hands-on part test as well. But then there's a 680-hour requirement under a master coach. So that's huge. And you could be paired with a bad coach, I guess, it doesn't, do the kind of stuff we talked about with like interns. But at least, like I know David he didn't do it with me. He didn't do those hours with me. So we had a different experience. But I also think that helps too, because you can contrast
Absolutely.
what you don't want to do, because you're like, I don't really want to do that, or
Well,
that
you just
style
add
of coaching.
more tools to your toolbox. That resonates with me. I would do that differently. I think there's value in that. Now, what about not strength and conditioning? What about just your the younger football coach? Having mentors, I think, is super important.
Oh yeah,
Studying
yeah,
under.
for sure. I mean, somebody's got to guide you, right? Otherwise, you're just.
I think one of the biggest mistakes, and of course I'm adding myself to this presentation, which I probably shouldn't have, but unfortunately a lot of people think because they were a good athlete that they'll naturally be a good coach. And coaching is a skill.
Yeah, that usually doesn't work though.
It doesn't.
It hasn't, yeah.
It doesn't often work, yeah. Okay, how do you approach or persevere through adversity and challenges? What are your strategies there?
I feel like I haven't had that much adversity, honestly. I just look and I see so many, even our student athletes go through so much worse situations and have so much, different home. When I was going to junior college, it was easy, I went home and food was made and everything else, and just dealing with seeing kids not, eating. And now I know we have better resources. We just talked about that yesterday at the meeting, but like better resources. But at the same time, I used to always say this: if at this level, if they allowed us to just feed every student athlete breakfast every morning, every record would be different. They would all be broken. Like our transformations would be night and day.
It's so true.
Like it's just give me that one meal.
And that's why so many of us work so hard to make sure our kids were fed over the years, even doing things that may have gotten us in trouble at times. But
Yeah. I mean, I've gotten in trouble with the chocolate milk. I mean, there's just things where you're just like, it's the right thing to do.
It's the right thing to do. Yeah. Outside of performance, what aspect of working with athletes really charges your batteries?
Just seeing them succeed, seeing them go off. I think, like, for me, when you get like the graduation announcements and stuff, when they go off, that's the biggest thing for sure.
Graduation.
Yeah.
Me too.
Right, because it's kind of like you're doing the full thing. You're finishing your course.
Because you're gonna go pro in something else eventually.
Yeah. It's a handful.
Right. As a coach who always pushes and expects more from athletes, have you ever been truly impressed by an athlete?
Of course.
Who and when?
Oh, does it say that?
That's what it says.
Oh, God.
No pressure. I think they don't think that you can be impressed. I think you've done a good job of always.
Because I do that. I do the poker face. There's been a lot in terms of just persevering and going through everything. Gosh, I don't know. There's a lot. I don't want to even.
You don't have to.
Because if I name, then I feel like I'm leaving people out. There's a couple in here though.
Yeah.
In the room, so.
Okay. This is, they characterize this as a, quote, bit of a cliche question, but what advice would your current self give to the Robert Dos Remedios that was just starting at COC, or anyone getting into the teaching, academic, training, coaching at the collegiate level? I think I missed a word in there reading it, but basically.
What advice would I give?
Yeah, what would you give the Dos Remedios that was just starting at COC, your current self, give your younger self?
Gosh, that's tough. Because there's probably a lot of stuff. I think when I got, when I got into coaching, right when I got done playing at Cal, I immediately went and started coaching. And Lole, who works here, he was on my very first team I coached. I know we all think he's older than me, but I was so unimpressed and demanded so much and was so disappointed with so many of these kids. And Jim Sartoris, the head coach at that time, he pulled me aside and he said, "Hey, you gotta realize something. Like, they're all different. They're all gonna be different. They don't necessarily gonna have the same focus as you did. Like you did what you did because you had that focus." I felt like I was pretty good with that in terms of understanding that by the time I got here, but there were times still, I think, where I just expected more. And it's really frustrating because you've coached them, we've all been around them. People that are so talented and yet do everything to sabotage that, whether it's a classroom or we've had so many kids that could have been NFL kids, but couldn't even get, that Division I scholarship, so just understanding that everybody's, I guess, you're going to run into that more often than not, that they're different,
Yeah, we always say we're gonna get you to the same level, but we've got to coach differently to get you there.
There's a lot of weaving.
So I think this is a good last question. I think it's a good way to finish. If your students and athletes could only take one thing from you, one lesson from you, what would you want it to be? I like to say it's not where you start, it's where you finish, because of all those things we talked about with where people come in and where they've ended up. We've even had people come and fail and go somewhere else and come back, and turn the corner, just that, I guess, the perseverance part of it, to just kind of always keep fighting for that, because you're going to end up in a different place. And most of us end up in a little bit of a different place anyway than we think we're going to end up. Absolutely.
So I think just that, not where you start, it's where you finish.
Agreed. And maybe a little bit of the work ethic along the way.
Yeah, for sure.
A little bit?
Yeah.
A little bit.
Definitely that.
Yeah.
Like when I was at Cal, one of the things was, our coaching staff was always overcome adversity. And that was like adversity on the field. And also like one of the things that drives me nuts, and Dan can attest to this, and David can attest to this, is just, it's bothersome when people don't know how to act when they have success. That bothers me too, and they score a touchdown and it's all about them. Like, and Bruce Snyder, who was my coach at Cal, used to say, like, you score a touchdown, act like you've been there before. It's not your first time. Yeah. Right? Because the first time is always kind of a weird thing. So, just that.
Yeah. Well, clearly, a lot of people here to support you tonight. I personally want to thank you for taking the time to do this.
Thanks for asking
You've
me.
had a pretty impressive career, my friend. Thank you for sharing with us.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right. That concludes our presentation.
Yes.
Give me space.